Welcome into the Illinicast. Austin Berkland alongside Sonny Verma, not Austin Berkland times two, as is stated on the screen, but Austin Berkland and Sonny Verma joining you. This is the Illinicast, part of the Armchair Illini Network, and we're excited to be back. It's been a while, I know, but have had some content in there with some USC and Minnesota stuff, and then we'll be having UCLA and some other Big Ten university reporters on the Illini cast. So there we are. Sonny is back. Sonny, how's it going?
It's going fantastic, Austin. I miss doing this. I miss having all the interactions, and you've done a really good job, kind of holding down the fort with some of your season previews. And I just want to commend you. You've done a fantastic job. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to our guest too, and that's including the newbies for the USC Trojans and learning a little bit about Los Angeles and the USC Trojans. So that was awesome stuff from the Reign of Troy podcast crew. Um, but we have some news as well, talking about Illini basketball. Jasper Johnson, a guy who we thought could be in the mix for the Illini with his connections to Orlando Antigua. He has moved on to a top five that did not include Illini basketball, but that's the way of the jungle. Whenever you're dealing with top 12 guys in the country, sometimes you are going to miss. And this is just the world that we live in now as Illini basketball fans. This isn't like you're losing Cliff Alexander and the whole class just falls apart around that. This is an opportunity with Illini basketball and the connections that Orlando Antigua have, that maybe there's another five-star that comes in late to the process that you can just snag as well. There's just so much possibilities for this Illini basketball roster, Sonny.
Exactly right. It's we got in so late on the Jasper Johnson recruitment that I think we got the visit because of his relationship with Orlando Antigua. But while I was hopeful and I was excited that he chose to visit, and I think it's all credit to how good of a relationship builder that Orlando is, it looks like when you kind of look back on everything, we didn't really stand much of a shot, and it might have been more of a just out of respect for Orlando visit for Jasper. But like you said, just because one 5-star didn't commit doesn't mean that we won't go after the next one, which I'm sure we're going to talk about shortly. It's a new age when it comes to Illini basketball. And now we're really, going out and trying to recruit the best in the country, not just the best that will come to Illinois, but the best, prep players in the entire country. And so, we're going to miss more than we're going to hit it. But once we hit, those are going to feel extra nice.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Caden Boozer, who is a guy that Illinois is really have the bullseye on in terms of targets right now. Number 19 in the country, according to 24/7, third best point guard in the class, and then the third best point guard third best player, pardon me, in the state of Florida. He is the son of Carlos Boozer, the Chicago Bull and Utah Jazz member, and I know that he has another brother, Cameron Boozer, who's the number two player in the country. But it feels like Illinois is going after the unsung hero of the Boozer twins, and that might pay dividends, Sonny.
Yeah, I think it's a long-term strategic play. It's making a good impression on Caden while we can. More than likely, they're both going to end up at Duke, Florida, Miami. One of the teams that have been recruiting both of them as a combo, basically since they started seeking out recruitments. But Cameron, a lot of people are expecting to be a one and done type of player, and he'll probably be playing college basketball one season, and then play the following year in the NBA. I think this is just kind of a long term play in the sense where if Caden is open to moving on from college once Cameron leaves. Again, it's all about building that relationship, and hopefully we can leave enough positive impressions to him that he'd consider coming to Champaign.
And I mean, this is a situation too where if you don't get Caden right away, at least with Orlando Antigua and Brad Underwood, you leave the opportunity for a transfer in the future. It's all about relationship building and continuing those relationships over and over and over again. And who knows, maybe Jasper Johnson flails a little bit in his freshman year. The expectations are high, but again, you have a relationship with him, and that could pay more dividends his sophomore year or even his junior year if he transfers away from whatever university he comes in.
It's just the reality. Again, top of the high school players in the country. We're gonna swing and we're gonna miss a lot. Duke misses a lot. North Carolina misses a lot, but that doesn't mean we don't try. And so, I talked about this on the latest episode of Locked On Illini. you know, uh, Greg Waddle from Sleepers Media did suggest that, is it all flash and no substance? And I don't think it could be further from the truth. I think the reality is that we're just getting adjusted to this new line of recruiting. You know, Even a year ago, 2 years ago, we would be super excited at the thoughts of being in the final five of just one 5 star. Now it seems like we're going to be in the final five, final six of almost a handful of 5 stars. And that's just kind of the reality of it. Moving forward, Illinois, because of our NIL, because of our head coaching staff, the recruiters that we have on staff, we're going to be aggressive in trying to bring in the best talent in the country. And there's other schools like Illinois is usually not associated with these top 10, top 15 guys. It's now, we're involved. BYU apparently is, coming up with money out of nowhere. Those are the type of programs that are going to be involved with the Arizonas, with the Kentuckys, with the Kansas moving forward for this top end blue chip talent.
I mean, it's a new world in college basketball. This isn't the old days of, oh, there's only four options:
Right.
Kentucky, Duke, Arizona, North Carolina, and then maybe sprinkle in the flavor of the month that is recruiting really well at the higher end. You have Rutgers that is at the top of classes this year of the freshmen that are coming in to Piscataway. Arkansas is doing what they're doing with the Tyson food money. Illinois is doing amazing things with their NIL capabilities and their success on the basketball court. It's just a new era where more teams are in play for these 5 star players, and Illinois is firmly in that mix of that 8 to 15 schools that are going to be competing for these 25 or so 5 star players that come in every single year. And that's exciting for an Illini fan, and Illini fans just got to get those expectations away from where it's always been. This is a deep roster, and it will continue to be a deep roster. Getting the likes of Kasparis even internationally, that's another way. And I've read it perfectly. There was somebody talking about Dabo Sweeney, how he never uses the transfer portal in football, and somebody said, "Why does it matter? It feels like there's going to be a lot of playing time for freshmen." But I saw a quote tweet, and it made so much sense. Dabo Sweeney is playing 5 card poker and not 7 card stud. And Illinois is using all avenues to improve this roster day in and day out. And there is no stone left unturned on this planet Earth that Brad Underwood won't try to find talent that'll come to Champaign.
Yeah, I think it was Bud Elliott who quote tweeted that. And he's exactly right. We've talked about this before. Both you and I are pretty big Brad Underwood fans. There's not many coaches who I would take over him when it comes to just always kind of looking at the latest trends, looking into the future, and seeing where the game is going. He was very aggressive right off the bat with the transfer portal. If you have any Michigan State fans, ask them what they think of Izzo. Izzo's obviously a legend, but he's someone who doesn't seem to want to adapt. He's kind of the college version of Dabo. And, having Brad in charge, and it's not just having Brad, we're giving him the weaponry, the war chest to go out and seek out the best players. And, it just at the end of April, we bring back arguably the best assistant coach in all of college basketball. Like, we are aligned towards success here at Illinois. And it's just a matter of patience, which I don't know how patient us Illinois fans can be, But I think the foundation is in place now.
Yeah, and I mean, it's even more than just patience. There's going to be a lot of bites at the apple, and I know you can't take any season for granted because everything could come falling apart just due to a different legislation or NCAA rule or something crazy that'll happen, and then you're like, oh, this changes everything that we knew about. But you look at the great baseball teams like the Dodgers and the Yankees back in the 90s and all these great franchises, they've had multiple bites at the apple every single year, um and they strike whenever they have those many bites. And I think that's where Illinois basketball is going to be, where we're going to have so many bites at being elite and being in elite eights that there's got to be some time that it's going to all combine together for a perfect storm, pardon the pun, with twisters coming out. But I mean, that is what Illinois basketball is going to be. It's going to be a team that's going to have a lot of bites at the apple, and it's just all about Brad Underwood's X's and O's capability in those later rounds against other elite coaches and other elite talent.
And it's just like we now have the mentality of one guy down, next man up. If Jasper Johnson's out, well, that's fine. Now we just found out Illinois is in the final five, I think it was, of Mikael Brown Jr.,
Yeah.
who's the number 2 ranked point guard in the 2025 class. Like that's our backup options now. Before we maybe go for a blue chip prospect and then settle for a guy in the 90s or the hundreds or 110. No, if we fail on getting number 6 into Champaign, then we'll go down to number 9. And then if it doesn't work out with Mikel, we'll go down to the number 20 prospect. Uh, we've just done such a fantastic job of raising the ceiling of this program. And, I think someone said in the chat, which we'll start catching up with in a second, Illinois basketball is not just back, but we're on a trajectory to reach levels we've really never reached before.
And I mean, again, like the connections that Orlando Antigua and Jeff Alexander and Tim Anderson are having. If Kasparis and Avicic both have great experiences at the University of Illinois, that opens up a mini pipeline at these countries and these leagues that these guys will play in. I mean, think of Illini Golf with Thomas Dietrich and Adrian Dumont de Chassard. Those two guys are both representing Belgium in the Olympics currently. And uh, both of them, one of them went there because one came back and was like, dude, you need to go with Mike Small. It's a great experience at the U of I in terms of golf. And I think that very well could be an experience for Illinois that we could get some elite talent from overseas just because of number one, winning, and number two, great experiences, and number three, possible NIL dollars.
And that's why I feel like Kasparis is so important to next year's team. I mean, I love him. It seems like the entire internet really loves the clips that we've all seen of him, as of late. But if he ends up being a one and done here, he was a part of the Barcelona program. If we can prove that we can develop Europeans and get them to the next level, the NBA level, after just 1 year. And hey, by the way, we're also going to pay you very handsomely for the 1 year that you're here. Again, it's just it's Underwood playing chess when everyone else is playing checkers. Avicic, 21 years old, he just got onto campus. If he can perform and be a potentially all Big Ten type of big, again, it just gives more credence. Because guess what? Orlando Antigua is an excellent recruiter, arguably the best in the country, but he's also a really freaking good assistant coach, like big man developer. And having Avicic under his control is something we can be excited for.
And I mean, with reclassification, the Will Riley game, like look at the class of 2026. Maybe one of those 9 are like, you know what, we're gonna reclassify to class of 2025. I mean, that's a possibility as well. I mean, guys are looking to make bank earlier and earlier, and if they have the high school credits that allow them to do this, then hey, that's going to be a possibility. So again, no stone is going to be left unturned for Brett Underwood as he assembles his team to go to the Pizza Hut parking lot in February in the Big Ten slate.
Let's go ahead and catch up on a couple of comments. Alex says, "Why do you have so many hats in the background, Austin? Clean up before we start recording. Come on now."
Well, I mean, this is clean. I just have a large, extensive hat collection. So I know what you're doing, Alex. But yes,
Kirkland says, "Favorite part of being at Big Ten Media Days." Yeah, some of you know I was at in Indianapolis on Tuesday when Illinois went up, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. We want to get a little basketball talk out of the way first. Jason Long, thank you for coming back. We are so deep and dangerous. Give props to Underwood, his flowers from bringing us from the bottom to the top. Love watching all these talks. Illini basketball is back. Absolutely, it's back.
absolutely.
It's a nice feeling. Check it out. Any comments on looking to the future class starting in 2028 with Cole Kelly? The kid isn't even in high school yet and already has an offer from Illinois. Yeah, I mean, I'm by default a big fan of Cole Kelly because he went to my high school, or he's no, I went to that high school, and he's going to that high school. I'm a grad of Neuqua Valley, where he's going to be entering his freshman year next year. I mean, 2028 is a really long ways off to really talk about the field. But I mean, Cole is a guy who is the number one player in the state. And, we kind of reference back to the conversation me and Austin are having right now, chasing after a guy like Caden Boozer, Jasper Johnson, some of the top players in the country. Well, that's what Cole Kelly is going to be once it's his turn in 2028. The difference is we'll have a long-standing relationship with him at that point. We were, I think, his first high major offer. So I mean that does matter, especially in today's day and age. So I mean I couldn't tell you much about his game. He looks good from the clips, but again, I feel weird watching an eighth grader play basketball and trying to put my scouting hat on. But if Brad thinks he's good enough, and then Orlando thinks he's good enough, and the rest of the guys think he's good enough, then let's just wait it out.
And none of these truly are committable at this moment. I
Right.
don't know if Cole Kelly could commit verbally, even. Like, I think Brad would be like, slow down. This is just but let's have you grow a little bit and see if that trajectory stands a little bit. But it does say that, hey, we liked you enough to even think about this. But whenever you keep offering those guys, and we're going to have a longer standing um, pattern of winning as well. So
Uh-huh.
that's going to help out a lot whenever Cole is ready to make that decision as a junior or a senior to decide where he wants to go to college.
Exactly. And check it out. Also says now there's a blue chipper from Finland that is talking about going to Illinois. Yeah. Mika, something like Mika Murinen. It's not
Yeah,
Mori
he
Murinen, right?
is. Yeah, he is very similar to former Bulls power forward Lowry Markkinen. Very similar games, and just would be an unbelievable get. And continuing on that newfound European tradition that Brad Underwood has established, at least with Kasparis and Ivisic. So um, that's a solid. That's a solid chance that happens as well. Like, and of course, there'll be more teams mentioned. BYU seems to be floating around the European market as well. Just a lot of Mormons in Illini. Look out, Europe.
Yeah. And, he's one of the recruitments which Illinois was in pretty early on. But, I think over the past week, like Duke has offered, a lot of the blue blood programs have gotten jumped on the Mika train. But again, all credit to Underwood and staff. They recognized him a little bit early, and I'm hoping the fact that we were involved with that recruitment a lot earlier is going to give us a little added weight once it comes time for him to commit.
Yes, this is going to be an interesting off season. Still, like it's never truly the off season anymore. A lot of moves that can happen in future classes in terms of visits and everything to schedule. But we do have a football season coming up, and Sonny, you were at Big Ten Media Days. So, what was your first impressions of your first Big Ten Media Days in person?
One of the coolest experiences of my life. Again, it's for someone who just started. Austin, you and I, we started Illinicast last August, so we're less than a year in. And if you would have told me then, like during our first episode, that hey, 11 months from now, you're going to be walking on the field, Lucas Oil Stadium, where the Colts play, and you're going to be chasing down Brett Bielema and asking questions to Ryan Fickle. It's or Luke Fickle. I would have never believed you, but it was a really cool experience. Spencer McLaughlin, who's the Locked On College Football guy, went to the big no SEC media days the week before, and he did say that ours, believe it or not, was like even bigger. There was more people at ours, and it kind of shows you, the money and the TV attention that our conference is getting. And again, I'm super grateful. It's because of the viewers of this show and people like you, Austin, the folks at Armchair Illini, that I got that sort of experience. And Brett. So for those of you who don't know the formats, there's 6 coaches every day, and you get 15 minutes to talk about whatever, and then you take questions. Or actually, it's like 15 minutes. Normally, a coach talks, and then you fill it up the rest with the questions. But Brett literally talked for 13 minutes. My hand was up. I didn't even get to ask my question because one question was asked, and Brett had already reached his 15-minute mark, and so he got off the stage. But yeah, overall, incredible experience. I hope to get the opportunity to do that again next year, and moving forward. And basketball season's right around the corner, as we also talked about. So that media days, I'm going to try to head down to, and really fun. You've been there before. I think I saw a picture of you asking a question.
Yeah, that was back when Jim Delaney. I asked about when transfers were going to be immediately eligible. I mean, crazy world back then when that
Right.
wasn't a thing, and now
I
players
was like
can just go year to year.
back with like
Um,
VH tapes and stuff.
absolutely. But yeah, it was a much smaller venue back in the day, 4 less teams, obviously. And it's just crazy seeing like all the reporters that you grew up reading just right in front of you, and um, having the radio show back in the day, and just snagging people out of the crowd to do interviews with you is just awesome. I remember when Clayton Thorson was drafted by the Eagles in the 7th round. I was like, I I interviewed him in the first day of media days that year. So those crazy situations, and I remember like AJ Hawk, and now he's one of the biggest media stars on the planet with Pat McAfee.
Yeah.
He was just walking through Big Ten media days whenever he's getting his really big push into media, and those situations are nothing that I take for granted and everything. So I'm glad you had a very similar experience there. But let's get to the substance of what Brett had to say. Did anything really stick out to you?
I mean, not so much. Brett's very, very good at being personable. Like I can see why some kids just truly relate to him. He for a guy who recruits as hard as he does, he remembers each individual story. And as I mentioned before, like I introduced myself to him very early at the convention, and hours later, he remembered my name. And while I asked him a question, and it's one of those where he talked about the Terrence Brooks recruitment, where for 2 weeks, when they got word that he was going to enter the transfer portal, they didn't. The parents didn't want Terrence to be involved in the recruiting, so Brett really literally just sent Aaron Henry, who was supposed to go on a recruiting trip somewhere else. He sent him to Dallas to go talk to Brooks's parents for a little bit. They built that relationship, and so when it was time to introduce Terrence, it was almost just a matter of time that he came to Champaign. Pat Bryant was there, and I'll be hand up honest, I did not realize like the type of he's got a star personality because he was our number 3 last year, and even lower on the ladder in the years previous. You didn't really get to hear him talk very much, but really nice kid, really very personable. He loves talking. Even when he was doing his individual interviews, at one point, there's only 1 or 2 reporters left, but most guys just get up and leave. He refused to. He was having fun. He was asking people about the new NCAA football game, and he just struck up conversation about that. So I think of anyone who I came out more surprise in a pleasant way, it was Pat Bryant, a guy who he's ready to take on that role. At least if you listen to what he said, and I just think he's got that personality where that wide receiver room is very green, is very young, but if he's the leadership voice, along with Zachary Franklin, who obviously is the most accomplished returning wide receiver in all of the nation right now, I think we got some good veteran leadership there.
Yeah, I mean, you got to have a little swag as a wide receiver. Like if you don't, then there's something wrong with you. Unless you're just the Mikey Dudek, just hit the nose, like just nose of the grindstone kind of mentality. I feel like those are the only two options, and you kind of want that swagger from your number one or number two wide receiver, especially in a room that needs some confidence. With some drops that happened last year, some misplays last year. This is vital for Illinois to have that swagger with that.
Austin, what do you
Any
think of
other
this question?
coaches?
Oh, sorry.
Okay,
No, I was gonna say, what do you
go
think of
ahead.
this question? But check it out. Kind of worried about Brett if he does not get us to a bowl game this year. I think he's rebuilding the program.
Yeah, I mean, I will. We'll get to the preseason poll that was placed before the year, but I feel like this is a bigger year for Brett Bielema than I think some Illini fans truly wrap their heads around. I don't know if it'll end in a firing if expectations aren't met. If it's a two-win kind of season, then yes, you can start sounding the alarm bells. But Brett kind of has set up things like based on what he's talked about both in the scrum and on the big stage that he's kind of confident in this year's roster. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not like he's just being like, "Hey, we're kind of new at some positions." No, he straight up said that we have 17 guys that have played 10 games or more in college football. That's a lot of experience, and I don't know what the stats are on who can say that in the Big Ten. There are probably a few out there, but it is crazy that he's setting this expectation so high after a 5-7 year. And you do have a tough non-conference game against Kansas. You got a trip to Oregon coming up as well. I mean, there are some tough games that Illinois will have to battle through, but I do think that this is a bigger year for Brett to just establish a culture with these new four teams coming in. Football is obviously the star of the show in terms of realignment and getting bigger TV dollars and all that kind of thing. So I think this is a bigger year than what Illinois fans really think.
Jay, despite his Cardinals logo there, actually said something very smart here. The recruiting has to get a lot better in football. Sorry, only one 4-star is not going to get it done, especially with this conference getting more competition. Jay, you nailed it. I mean, that's it, right? I mean, we're competitive on the football field. We rarely at this point, get blown out like we were doing, in the last couple of years of the Lovey era. Obviously, the floor of the program has raised, considerably. Everyone I see on the field, whether they're practicing or whatever, look like they're, power P4 football players. We had a stretch where we were out recruiting MAC teams, and that was just about it when it came to the football program. But now we are beating legitimate other Power 4 programs for players, but we're still lacking the high end talent that some of our contemporaries are getting. Indiana is getting some 4 or 5 stars. Purdue is able to land a couple 4 stars in this past year, and that's just not something we've been able to replicate. It shows just how much of a bummer it was that we couldn't win that West Division 2 years ago, because I feel like we're kind of feeling the ramifications of it now. We lost a lot of momentum last year, finishing 5-7.
Yeah, I know we have one of the lower number of commits for the class of 2025, but you kind of look at the average star rating, and it's near the lower end of the conference in the Big Ten. So that does worry me in the future of this Brett Bielema era. But the transfer portal has gotten better, at least with getting the likes of JC Davis, who I don't think a lot of people are talking about as being the most impactful transfer in the Big Ten. Um, Terrence Brooks, Zachary Franklin. I mean, those guys are going to be vital to showing the next era of transfers that you can succeed, you can get drafted, you can win at Illinois. So maybe Brett is just seeing what he can develop from the high school ranks, and then maybe the transfer portal is a little bit more important than it was to him 2 years ago.
Jason says, I follow basketball way more than football, but I think Coach B will get it done. He has some swag to him. I think Coach Bielema is our best chance to prove that Illinois football can make it. I know, Austin, you get in trouble sometimes with your comparisons to the University of Missouri, and hey, why can't we be them? I think Coach Bielema, we just need patience. He's a guy who I know 5-7, 8-5, and 5-7. I mean, honestly, it's not a bad start for for the first 3 years of an Illinois coach, but with all the money coming into the conference this year and years moving forward, what I'm worried about is there's going to be a lack of patience on fans' part and Josh Whitman, because keep in mind, the college landscape is changing drastically, and Josh is kind of almost in charge of it. He's on the committee that kind of dictates how things are going to be transforming in the future, and Josh knows how important that football program is, and excitement in football. As much as we're all passionate basketball fans, it really in reality doesn't matter in the future of college sports. Everything is going to be dictated by football, and that's why you know um, what Coach B is doing right now is so important to this university.
I do like that he doesn't apologize for being Illinois' coach. He doesn't apologize about Illinois football. He doesn't set the expectations low, and that is very refreshing. Because I mean, Lovey and Tim Beckman just kind of felt like, oh, we're gonna do what we do. Like that's it. Like Brett has actual expectations for this program and vision to get that done. I feel like, and I think if this season falls apart, I think Aaron Henry will obviously be gone, and I think that's his biggest challenge is finding that perfect defensive coordinator to replace Ryan Walters. And I think that might be what stalls the program if he doesn't get the right guy coming in.
It's tough because Brett has such a large Rolodex, with all his 16 years of experience as a head coach. He knows as many people in the industry as anybody. But if you really take a look at it, like he's made some poor hirings when it comes to his coordinator spots. I forget the first offensive coordinator's name off the top of my head, but he
Yeah,
only
he's at Illinois State now.
yeah he stayed only 1 year and he was gone. Aaron Henry is he looked like an up and coming star, and we had another guy, Kevin Kane, who was like supposed to take that spot. So Brett picked Aaron Henry over Kevin Kane. And whether that ultimately worked out, I don't know. We'll kind of see. But that's another thing Brett did talk about at media days, that during his progression to become a head coach eventually, as a coordinator, he said his first year was his worst, and that he grew considerably in his second year and then his third year, and he's counting on that same sort of trajectory with Aaron. They've had some very difficult conversations. And the question I wanted to ask Brett, but I never really got around to, is you know at the postseason presser last year, he talked about whether it's time to evaluate if the league had caught up to their defense, because the two worst defenses in the conference were Purdue and Illinois, who are essentially running the same thing. So I really wanted to follow up with him and see if they had evaluated anything, and what kind of adjustments they were making. Not that I expect him to really tell me, Joe Schmo, with a podcast, all the secrets that for next season, but I'm just kind of reminding him, like, hey, you said there were changes that were going to be made. Were there?
Yeah, I mean that is the vital part, and maybe it's just some change of personnel, maybe adding some veterans on that Illini defense is going to help out a lot. Like I can't overestimate how much Terrence Brooks low upper raises the floor of this Illini football program. I mean, if he isn't here, we're dealing with a lot of youth and inexperience still at that defensive back position. So I'm thankful that that they got Terrence, because now you can start to judge the defense a little bit on how strategy goes, as opposed to just throwing it and saying, "Hey, it's because of inexperience." And I know that's Brett Bielema and Aaron Henner's job to build the talent every single year, but it's also to develop the scheme week to week and making sure you're ahead of the adjustments that Big Ten offenses will make, because you do have USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington that can pick apart these defenses. Maybe not UCLA, but the other three are very formidable whenever Illinois may have to go against those teams in the future of the Big Ten. But
And go ahead.
go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, it's not just Terrence Brooks. I think the name I actually heard most from Brett's mouth uh, on Tuesday was Tyler Strain. Like, he seems to
Mhm.
really be impressed and expect a very big season for him next year. I was kind of surprised because I think when I was doing like an evaluation of the top 15 players on Illinois in that football game, Tyler Strain had like the third or fourth highest rating on the team. And I wasn't too sure about that, but if you listen to what Brett was saying on Tuesday, EA Sports may not have been too far off.
That yeah, I agree. That was surprising to see Tyler up there in terms of the defensive ratings on the Atlanta football team in college football 25. So I I think you're right. I think that's a pick to click in this entire season that may not be talked about enough this full season.
Jay makes another good comment. Illinois last great year was under Zook. Zook, he recruited very well early on, and you've seen the results of a recruiter. If football is more important than basketball, I think you need a better coach. I think the reason I think Brett is good for this program is I think Brett is comfortable with Illinois being his last job. I think if we moved on from Brett and we went after an ace recruiter, it'd probably be a younger guy from a group of five school who may spend 2-3 years at Illinois, and he may be recruiting very well, but I think he would be ready to move on to his next opportunity, and then Illinois would be in the same cycle all over again. I think what we need to kind of do is just be patient with Brett, because what Brett is capable of doing is just laying a solid foundation to the program, where I think by the time he's done, we can be expecting to win 6, 7, 8 games every single year. And then when he's ready to retire, then we've elevated our program to the point where, like, the top offensive coordinators or the top defensive coordinators of Power Four schools would be interested in this job. And that's when we can get more of the high level talent on our sidelines.
Yeah, I mean, I think if Brett fails in the next couple of years, I think the Big Ten cachet will help out a lot. Where maybe you could get the third best coach in the ACC or the third best coach in the Big 12, where they know they're trapped behind a Big 12 might not be the best example. Maybe the ACC is perfect, where they know they're not going to get past Clemson and North Carolina. So why not go to a bigger conference where you have more access to the playoff, if that's ultimately the goal of Illinois football, which it does seem like it, because Josh Whitman mentioned it in the scrum that, hey, we were almost there. We were in an initial college football ranking 2 years ago, which I completely forgot about. So there are aspirations there that could be met ish if Illinois makes the right calls. And I really wonder if Josh Whitman is kicking himself a little bit. I know Brett Bielema still has a massive amount of talent as a coach. He's shown it in the Big Ten, but Lance Leipold, those two finalists were right there. And seeing just all the buzz that Kansas has gotten the last 2 years is just, I wonder if Josh Whitman's like, oh, almost, just almost. And that could be a decision that lays with Josh Whitman if Brett Bielema does fail, but that's way too premature. I mean, I think this Illinois team will make a bowl game this year, maybe even get 7 wins. And that brings me to the preseason poll done by Cleveland.com, and Illinois was picked 13th. They are sandwiched between number 12 Minnesota and number 14 Northwestern. I do think Illinois should be above Minnesota, and Maryland could be a toss up right there. So I think they could be number 11 in this Big Ten when everything settles out. And I think that's pretty good, especially in a league with 18 teams. That shows that you aren't the bottom feeders, and you are in the middle, and that's room to grow. That's room to showcase to recruits that you are that you mean business in this new Big Ten, because last place you want to be is dead last, and that's where some guys, I'm sure, pick Illinois to be, because you're not 13th if people don't pick you lower than 13th. So I think this is an opportunity to really seize on some expectations on the outside that are pretty low, and you can go ahead and supplant them, I think.
It's funny you said 11th. The Kings of the North, that show did their, like, they rounded up a bunch of analysts and journalists, and for some reason they picked me one to submit a poll myself too, and I actually had Illinois at 11. That's exactly where I had them as well, which again is funny because anyone who follows the history of Illinicast knows you're more negative on the football program, and I tend to be a little bit more positive, and yet we kind of both see the same level for this football team. I do think it's a simple matter of we lost a lot of luster last year and a lot of the momentum, especially in particular with the national media. I think a lot of people are a lot more down on Luke Altmaier than Illini fans are.
Mhm.
His struggles in that Penn State game is just something that everyone basically made their mind on him after watching that first half, not realizing that Luke actually ended up the season pretty strong. Obviously lost the job to Paddock, but Paddock threw for 515 yards. There's a lot of quarterbacks would have lost their job to that guy at the time. But I think if Luke now, who has 10 games of starting experience, if he can make a little jump now being a sophomore, I think I'm confident we'll reach the 5.5, and I think we'll be closer to the 11 than I think we're like 15th in the USA Today poll. Uh, it's not where you want to see Illinois in the fourth year of Brett Bielema, hovering in the bottom quarter, but it's still baby steps.
Yeah, and I mean, we got to remember what the offensive line and before the offensive coordinator adjustment, what Barry Lunny kind of mixed in later on in the season. Like, that Kansas game was just a joke that the offensive line had in a game, and I think that kind of rattled Luke Altmaier in multiple weeks, not just the Kansas game. So I think with having an anchor like J.C. Davis out there, I think that can be so vital just to calm Luke down early on in the year. That way, so you're not um, compounding interest in terms of nervousness in the pocket. I mean, even in the couple games that should be just easy bye wins against MAC opponents, like, that was very startling to see what the offensive line was in those games. And I don't think Luke ever truly fully mentally recovered from that instance. So I think with an off season and him just being able to hit the reset button with a almost new group around him can help him out. And having a guy like Zachary Franklin, a sure-handed receiver, Malik Elzy has another year under his belt, and Pat Bryant doing what he's doing, I think this could really help Luke. And I think that's why a lot of Big Ten media folks are really underestimating this Illini football team.
I feel like Coach B is getting guys to the league that this last year was 4, correct? And year before 4 or 5. I feel like he's getting there, and I agree. I agree. Keep Coach B, and he will get this program back. Uh, yeah, I mean, but the thing is, we still got to win at least 5 or 6 games this year. Again, I'm a
Yeah,
big Coach Bielema fan, but if we win 3 or 4, then all of a sudden, again, with the resources that this university has compared to what, like 80% of the rest of the country. Like, we should be winning more than 3-4 games, and so the pressure's on Brett to perform on his end too.
Yeah, I mean, he could get 3 to 4 more guys in the NFL, but you look at this last year, 4 guys in the league, and you still had 5 wins. That's unacceptable. So I think that's where Illinois really needs to um, meet those expectations of the pros that you have. Like I'm glad the depth is better.
Yeah, Brad makes a great point. The recruiting is getting better. Can't get rid of Bielema. Look back at the classes from a couple years ago. Only a couple guys had Power Four offers. 2025, all the recruits have Power Four offers. Yeah, and I kind of
And
mentioned that earlier. Before we were battling and winning out against Central Michigan or Eastern Michigan, and now we're going head to head against the Michigan States, the Virginias, the Virginia Techs, and locking it down. So the floor has certainly raised, but we're still not getting the higher end, the 4 stars which we're going to need in order to start, getting closer to the middle point of the Big Ten.
and the world has changed too. I realize that, but you look at Wisconsin and Brett Bielema's recruiting record. I mean, it wasn't the brightest, but he still won a lot of football games at the University of Wisconsin too. So I think that it leads to a lot of ample opportunity for Brett Bielema to develop these players that he has brought in. Um, yeah, do you have anything else in terms of Big Ten Media Days that stuck out to you besides the big Oregon Duck?
No, not really. I mean, we're, I think, like 36 days away from the first game, and Austin and I, we're coming up with different game plans and strategies for our Illini cast, and how often we're going to be on, and we're going to be talking hopefully after every single game. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. We're 51 away from 1,000. That would be amazing if somehow we can hit 1,000 before the football season starts. But I'm excited. Unlike most Illinois fans, like, I'm an equal fan of both football and basketball. So dealing with this off season has just been kind of just such a bore, and it's not like the Cubs are necessarily making it any easier for fans like you and me. So 35, 36 days away. Practices start, I think he said, on Sunday, and so
Yeah,
hopefully we'll be getting some notes. Hopefully nobody gets hurt, and then before we know it, the season's going to be right around the corner.
it's just amazing. College football's in a new place. Illinois football seems to be in a new place than it was a decade ago. And it just is exciting. It's scary at the same time because there is so much newness. But I think once the ball is snapped, people will realize, hey, college football is still college football. So hopefully that comes out even with all the big changes. And I know we're losing some national rivalries that maybe not impact Illinois per se, but it's going to take getting used to, like SMU playing Virginia in the ACC or Arizona playing Kansas in the Big 12. Like there are some matchups that we're going to be like, really? That's a conference game. But it's exciting. We get to see new matchups and new upset opportunities as well. Like if we beat Oregon somehow at Autzen Stadium, what a world that would be, and just a way to turn the whole college football world upside down. It would just be incredible. So there are
There's
opportunities
positive
like
thinking, Austin, and then there's that.
that.
I
Yes,
think that,
that's
uh,
delusional, but
I do
still
like
fun.
I like the way Jason thinks here, though. Illini Cast needs to get a tent for tailgating at a football game this year. I hope the boys at our Armchair Illini are listening to that. Let's set something up. Let's find a sponsor. I think that would be fun if we
Yeah,
all
let's
got
do an
together
entire Armchair
at a
Illini, not
game.
just
And
Illini cast, because I know those boys have a lot of people reading their content over there at Armchair Illini. So maybe it can be an Armchair Illini tailgate. So let's put that in Kirkland and Alex's ear for this particular season.
all right, anything else, Austin?
No, great to be back on Illinicast. It's been a while, but tis the season of summer. Busyness and chaoticness reign supreme, and just happy to be back in a routine for football season coming up in what 36 days.
Yeah, it's crazy. Austin and I, we're going to try to get back into the routine of at least one show per week now, and then we'll increase it once the season starts. As often as we can, we'll do post game. Try to have you guys be able to call in. I think that'd be fun for next season. But on your end, guys, it doesn't cost you anything. Just hit that subscribe button. That would really help our channel. Obviously, we've been gone for a little while, so we got passed up for the second biggest Illini channel, but that doesn't mean we can't make our comeback. And I feel strongly in our community, in our fans, that we can do just that. But I'm looking forward to it. Football season's right around the corner, Austin, and I guess we'll see you next week.
Absolutely. ILL.
I and I.